Today, we're going to chat about Landlord Tenant Board issues. It's been really high profile in the media in the last couple of weeks. I've done a lot of reading on the topic, and I've done a ton of posting on social media platforms. Here are a few comments before we dive in deep into this discussion. Number one comments that I'm seeing out of 300 or 400 comments is that I'm never doing this again. It's been a horrible experience. They've destroyed my house. It took me, the highest that I've seen was 27 months to get rid of them. I'm going to use two hands because there's so many valuable comments here. I paid for keys. I paid $20,000 for them to leave so I could sell the house. I think it was in Chatham or Guelph area. Took a year to get them out, and they destroyed the house, even taking out beams, smashing drywall, kitchens, you name it, did it all. So we talk a lot about housing problems in our province of Ontario today. We talk about why the rents are so high today, because there's lots of demand. And I really feel that the rents are going to keep going higher and higher as the supply gets tighter and tighter. You're a landlord, Dan. You have properties. So, you've had some turnover, I'm sure. You're probably got some tenants in there that have been pretty good because you really haven't said much to me about issues or non-payments. But I think personally, I would be scared to buy an investment property today in this climate, not scared about the price points, scared about that I better be ready to fund that property for a year, and knowing that and having that cash sitting in the bank, because it's crippling people financially in this province.
Well, I have had one property that we went through 3 tenants in 3 years. Property was trashed. 3 years in a row, I was in it with another investor. We lost money 3 years in a row, 6 months of the year getting nothing. And, one thing that people don't realize is a lot of us investors, we don't have a lot of money. There's a lot of little investors out there that have one property or 2 properties. They're not rich. Like, everybody thinks that somebody with investment properties has all kinds of money. If we're not getting the rent, like, it's a problem.
It's a big problem.
And I have a lot of little investors that have 1 or 2 properties only.
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't handle, they don't have, jobs making $300,000 or $400,000. If they don't get this rent, they're in big trouble.
Yeah, to that point, and I'm going to go back and forth here from the comments from a lot of people. And some comments I got chimed in from people commenting that, well, these investors have lots of money and they can afford it and they've gotten, great appreciation. But it's not the case, right? What's really frustrating to see and hear comments from people that are kind of desperate in a sense and really hurt. It takes a toll on you mentally, knowing that some scum is occupying your property and you're paying the goddamn bill. Like, I don't understand that. And I know, me being in it years ago, it's only happened once, but I can't imagine paying that mortgage payment every month. Plus, I'm sure they're stop water. So there's some more money out, and someone living there and knowing that they're not going to leave because the Landlord Tenant Board's backed up 10 months to a year. And the problem is that these goddamn scum tenants know the system and are doing it and taking advantage of people. When you think about that, okay, so I'm going to make this up. So I went over to George and Pontiac or whatever and looked at cars and got mad and smashed the window, or I smashed or stole from the store. I got charges right away. So why are these people allowed today to go on, and this is fraud what they're doing? They're stealing, and it's acceptable today. This is total bullshit at the end of the day.
Listen, I've sat in a Landlord Tenant Board courtroom for 8 hours and listened to everything. It's unbelievable to me what the judge was saying. Like, my lady hadn't paid for 3 months, and she knew that in 3 months she was granted subsidized housing. Right. So I said to the judge, well, we all know she's got subsidized housing in 3 months. Why is she going to pay me? Mm-hmm. She's not going to pay me for the 3 months that she back owes me, or for the next 3 months, because she knows she's leaving anyway.
And you're never getting the money. And
well, they still wouldn't evict her. They still wouldn't evict her. No, you need to go to mediation. No,
Yeah.
you have to give her time. I mean, at the end of the day, she still was never evicted. And the last couple months of rent, instead of trying to get another court date, I just ate it at this point because I
Yeah.
know I'm not getting it. She doesn't have any money. Nothing's happening.
Yep.
So like, I'm never going to get it back. And that's another thing, is that these landlords, when you do take all these losses, and I have a lot of investor clients, we never get that money back. Nobody gets it back. Now you can go to a collection agency
You take a civil court.
and well, no, what they do is the collection agency tries to collect the debt. Even if you go to small claims court, you still have to somehow try to collect the debt. Well, how do you get it?
Right.
And so the collection agency will kind of keep chasing them. But I know with my one client, Bruce, he's been waiting 5 years for this collection agency to get him any money. Like, the people don't have anything. So where are you going to get the money from?
No, and I agree. And before we continue on, I don't want to paint the same brush, because there is a lot of good tenants out
Oh,
there.
there is.
There's
I have some.
Right. And I feel bad, bashing tenants and bashing tenants on this, but I'm only bashing the ones that aren't paying. And I'm glad. And even in the comments too, when I'm bashing some of these people that have done that, some of the tenants have, people on those social media platforms said, hey, I'm a tenant. I'm great. I never miss my bill. I can't believe that this is happening to some people. So,
I have some great tenants that right now that they all pay early. They all pay a day or two early. They're great. Like, I only have two of them, and they're great. They're great. And I mean, the one, I haven't raised the rent in 5 years because of that. They take care of the property, they pay early. The problem is, it's like anything in this world, the bad is gonna outshine the good, right? And there's professional tenants out there, and they know the system way better than we do. And during COVID, when they shut down they put the no eviction policy in, and there was no landlord tenant board hearings for almost 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're backed up like for almost a year. And then you go to court, and the guy, my friend's a paralegal. She just went to court 3 months ago. Guy hasn't paid in 6 months. He said, well, I'm retaining a lawyer. Okay, we'll get you a new court date then. It's been 5 more months now because he said he's getting a lawyer. So did he get a lawyer? That they have a court date tomorrow, by the way. Did they get a lawyer? No, he still doesn't have any representation.
He just bought himself 5 or 6 more months.
That's all he did.
That's the problem. And
that's right.
To that situation and point, I want to talk about experience that happened to me. This is going back 10 years ago. And I had one of those professional tenants in. And that was the first part of my experience into real estate investing. In a sense, I wasn't a real estate agent. I just kind of did everything my own, which was a big mistake, and it cost me. But where I'm going with this is, of course, first and last comes in. They come in and they look really prim and proper. The wife was well dressed. The husband wasn't there yet. The two daughters were there. Looked great. Felt a good feeling to me. Great. Got the first and last and stuff like that. Gave him the keys on Monday. And then I said, I'll come by later on in the week and pick up the checks for the remaining, year. So when I get there, of course, I knew right away I made a big mistake. 2 big German Shepherds. Oh, we had no pets, 2 big dogs. House was just full of personal belongings that wasn't even unpacked. The dude that was there looked like he just got out of, Kingston pen. And I knew right there, wow, what a mistake. I'm going to get to the point. So, of course, non-payment happened, which we know. I got a local paralegal in town. This is 10 years ago. We get a date. And then, I'm going to back that up for a sec. As soon as we had the meeting, me and the paralegal, I gave her the names of the tenants. And right away she says, you're not going to believe this, but I just evicted these people around the corner from your house. So they've already done it once to some tenant for some landlord for several months. And then they're allowed to go do it to someone else. And then we start talking, and I asked her, well, isn't there ways to communicate to the public about, these tenants? She communicated to me that I used to have it on my website so people could access and see these names of people that have been, professional tenants not to rent to. Well, she got told by the hires up to remove that or her license to practice paralegal will be gone. So all that information had to come down. So they're not allowing her publicly. I'm sure me and you can do it publicly, and anyone watching this broadcast and has a name, I'm all in for broadcasting it everywhere and send a picture, because what can they do to me? But so continuing, the suffering has to continue then. So we go to the tribunal, we get a court date. They don't show up, but the mother shows up and she says, get ready, because it's going to get real complicated here now. So I was going, what do you mean, in a sense? So we, you've been to them. So we do our thing. And then the mother comes up, says, I'm representing them today because they were up all night. They had to take their daughter to RVH because of an asthma attack. April flies out of her chair and says, this is a stall tactic. I just evicted them 3 months ago, whatever the timeline was back then, from another property. Don't fall for it. Guess what happens?
They stalled.
They stalled.
It
worked. So it bought them a couple more months. Okay.
Yep.
So then we return, I think it was 3 months later. Meanwhile, not paying rent, you name it. So now I'm probably about 6 months into it, paying non-payment of rent. Show up again. Then I get the eviction, of course, right? I get the eviction of successful, go to the sheriff, spend a couple $100, get it. They go there, great, post on the door, he's gone. So when I go to get the property back, we know where this is going. The property was in disarray. Carpets had to be pulled out, all new flooring, all new paint, probably about 10K worth of damages in there. So now I'm in, this is going back 10 years ago. So now I'm in about 16 to 18,000 in lost rent plus damages. So the neighbor beside me, who I got to know a little bit over the years of owning that property, said they came up in a U-Haul. So I called all the local U-Haul companies in the city of Barrie. I must have got the right one, because she goes, yep, they rented a U-Haul for a couple of days. And I said, would you be so kind to let me know where they're moving to? Because you would have that address. It was on Peter Street. Great. So now I have a location for where they're moving to. Oh, by the way, my appliances were gone, the washer and dryer. So of course I called the police, got the number from the Peter Street. We go there. Police walk into the home, and sorry, we can't help you. They said they're his appliances. So it's crazy, frustrating to see what is going on in today's rental market for people. I got an article. I think you should post that up there. I'm going to read something that this came out today on CBC. I feel so bad for these when I read these, but I think this is great education. So this gentleman is his name is Marco. He is from Collingwood. Went through a separation. They had two properties. So obviously they said, here's your property, here's his property, Marco's. Well, Marco's property was an investment property. So we had a tenant up and a tenant downstairs. He's trying to get access to that property to move in. Right now, this poor guy from Collingwood is sleeping in his goddamn car. He can't afford a place for his own because, one, the upstairs stopped paying for several months. Two, the downstairs doesn't pay either. So he's forced to live in his car. He said it's taking a ton of mental wellness out of his normal life. Winter's, change of weather is happening now. It's getting colder out there. Where's this poor guy going to sleep? And he's not even mentioning anything in this article about when is he getting in front of anybody. So yes, okay, we know why it's backed up, but you know what? At the end of the day, that's a crisis right there that has to be dealt with. And nothing's happening. So these tenants today know the law better than anybody else, feel that I don't got to goddamn pay rent. Screw it. I'm going to live here for a year till I get kicked out and go to the next one.
Well, until a sheriff shows up and puts a lock on,
10 months.
And that's about the only thing that's going to stop them. Because even when you get a ruling, like even if this guy, I have a guy right now in Aurelia waiting 8 months, still has no date, and they haven't paid in 8 months. He's got nothing. So even if you do get an eviction, they still don't leave. Like until somebody's actually coming in, changing the locks and putting the lock on, they're not leaving.
That could be another 3 weeks to a month, because I'm sure the sheriff's office, local sheriff's office, and bailiff's offices are backlogged as well. So great, I got an eviction. I got the paperwork. I won the judgment, but it may take another 5 weeks to get them out.
Mm-hmm.
Possibly. So as back to this article for a second. So there's another story I want to talk about. A couple from Brampton. They went over to India for 6 months, did a short-term rental with tenants. Sounds like there was a 2-unit house. Get back, tenants saying, I'm not leaving. This family, okay, is living on a single mattress in the basement. They can't afford to go anywhere because guess what they're doing?
They're paying their mortgage because the renter's not paying.
Correct. And do you know what they're doing for entertainment to save money? They are going to Pearson to watch the planes land.
Oh my God.
Because they can't afford to take the kids maybe to a movie theater or Canada's Wonderland or whatever. That is unreal. Then he applied to the board to under extreme circumstances. Guess what the board said?
They got to wait in line?
No. Sorry, your circumstances aren't extreme. They denied it.
Oh my gosh.
Family living on a single mattress and scum. Because I got to call them scum because that's what they are. These people are scum. Living upstairs and this gentleman and family struggling. There's something wrong when homeowners can't access their homes. I agree there's a system and a process, but this system is wrong. It is so wrong, and it's only going to get worse. How long are these backlogs going to get unclogged?
I don't know. They're still doing it by Zoom. And that's another thing that I've had issues with tenants trying to get tenants out when my clients have bought the property. And the tenant was like, well, this is my home. Well, no, you know what?
Tell me that story, because I remember us talking about, let's take that screen down now. We can get rid of it. Yeah, I want to ask you that. I remember that. Yeah. Because I remember
my buyer actually said, listen, I don't want to be rude to you at all, but where do you think you get the right to say that this is your home? And I said to him, buddy, you've lived here for 5 years. Do you know how good it is to stay in a rental for 5 years straight? That's pretty good.
That's really good.
You're renting something. You're not going to live there forever, and you don't own it,
No, they don't own it.
So we were trying to be polite, but it was nasty. And even on the day of closing, somehow the seller hired somebody. There was guys in trucks and vans and showed up, and they packed everything up and moved them out because they refused to leave. And
so the seller that you're repping the buyer?
I was representing the buyer, and somehow the seller, I don't know who he paid, but these 4 trucks showed up with all these guys, and they just started unloading the house.
So let me ask you this then. So when you did a walkthrough, what did you see when you did a walkthrough? Obviously, you came to the situation and conclusion that...
Well, first, they didn't want to let us do the walkthrough. They didn't want to give us access because we have COVID. And then, oh no, my dog's in there. And then, this is my home. I'm paying for it. You're not allowed to go in there. And we ended up going up there 3 times before we actually got in. Because they kept denying us, and the real estate agent on the other end was trying to tell them, listen, you, even for the landlord and tenant board rules, you have to allow the property be shown to be sold, and you have to allow the walkthroughs. You can't deny this.
No,
but they feel like they can deny it. So we were fighting and fighting. We finally got in. It was a gong show. There was dog crap and piss all over the floor. You couldn't even walk in there. It was a gong show.
Okay, but I also remember too from some discussions with you over the summertime where you were repping for a seller that was renting rooms out. Remember that when you were renting, they were renting out rooms, and one tenant refused to leave. The homeowner, the buyer, closed the goddamn deal, knowing that this tenant isn't leaving. Yes.
Well, what happened was the agent on the other side, I never promised vacant possession, okay, in the deal. And I knew what I was doing. I knew that it wasn't in there.
Right.
And the agent on the other side said, well, if they have to rent one room out, that's okay. I said, well, we did give the eviction notices. We gave everything, but of course we couldn't get a hearing in time.
Of course
He's
not.
going to get a hearing in time, right? You can't get a hearing in time.
No.
So we did everything in our power to try to get her out. And we gave them our paperwork to prove like everything we've done. And then the deal closed and the tenant was still in there. So she calls me and says, my clients are trying to move in and the tenant's still in there. And I said, yeah, well, she can't be in there. I said, okay, well, your client is now the owner of the house.
So the deal's already closed.
The deal's closed.
Okay, got it. Okay.
I can't do anything anymore.
No,
she's
you're
not
out.
my tenant anymore.
No.
So we called the lawyers because the lawyers all got involved. And it was explained to them that we aren't the owners anymore. We can't do anything. It's not, she's not our tenant now. She's yours.
That's right. That buyer just assumed that tenant.
Yes.
Automatically.
Bottom line. And they called the cops trying to get her out.
They don't get involved.
Nope. But I mean, that buying agent, she made a big mistake, right?
Absolutely, she did. A ton. There are lots of holes in that offer.
A ton. She even sent me in the email because I said to her, listen, we've given an N12, we've done everything, but I'm not sure if she's going to be out. Don't worry about it. And I had the email, which I kept, and I sent to the lawyer.
Sure.
And the buyer said, we didn't agree to that.
Yeah.
Well, your agent did. When you're hiring an agent, you're allowing them to speak for you, right? If they say it's okay, it's okay.
That's unbelievable. Like, that's just bizarre.
And I think one of the biggest problems with the Landlord Tenant Board, from my experiences, is that, you know, they already are on the side of the tenant. Like, automatically. For some reason, they think all the landlords want to do is kick everybody out to get higher rent.
Yeah.
They think that we're all on a mission to just try to make more money. We don't care about people, you know, and we do care about people. Like, I haven't raised my tenant's rent because she's been good to me and I'm good to her. There's a lot of landlords out there that
I think you should raise that rent.
I'm going to, because I have to. You know why I have to?
Not because of putting financial problems on there, just because if that's one of your duplex, if you're a single family home, okay, you got a little bit more leeway. But if that's your duplex, and eventually one day you will sell that house.
I know no one's going to buy it because the rent is too low.
Correct.
That I know. I have already thought about that. Yeah. So, but this is the big problem, is that when you go to the Landlord Tenant Board and you listen to this judge, the assumption is that we're the bad guy. The landlord is the bad guy right off the top. And I'm listening to case after case after case. I'm listening. I just cannot believe what I hear. Like, why do you assume like the tenant lies through their teeth? Okay, no problem.
Yeah.
What?
And you know and I seen the same thing over my years when I was a landlord, but I've also saw things where, you know, of course they want you to go to mediation. So they have a mediator that goes in the room with, you know, yourself and the tenant. And I will say at that part, I found them more favorable to find a solution, but more favorable for a landlord when there's non-payment. Like, I was in the discussions, I'm going, holy cow, I didn't expect this today. Like, she's going, bottom line, how can you expect to stay? You're not paying rent.
Yeah.
Like, come up with a solution here. And sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. It depends how far gone we were. And at that stage, from my experience, I think it was only 30 or 40 days. Again, this is 10 years ago. So, but, you know, but when you get in front of a judge, tenant's number one, landlord, well, they're in the gutter because we're going to throw him or her under the bus.
Well, the assumption is that the landlord has a lot more money and is a lot better off than the tenant is. That the tenant is struggling and the landlord is not. You know, we've seen in the media over the last, especially 6 to 8 months, how many landlords are struggling. And I mean, they have one property and now they're trying to pay 2 mortgages. And with these interest rate hikes, if you were variable like I am, my mortgage has gone up $1,000 since January.
That's it. And we have a problem when we see guys like Marco living in their automobiles for shelter because he can't afford a hotel room and drop $150, or he can't afford to go and rent an apartment because he's paying the mortgage plus the taxes plus. It's probably costing him 35 to 4K to keep. He can't afford to go anywhere. And I had someone on on TikTok the other day said they lost their entire life savings on the rental property. I didn't go into detail, so I'm reading between the lines that they probably, could have bought it at the peak. It's only come down 200K, lost that, plus lost all the rent. It said they had to sell. We lost our entire life savings. We're never doing this again. Where does that person go, in a sense, right? Like, that's, people don't get into the investing business planning to exit within a year. Let's be honest.
No.
Right? Those people getting into buying properties have a plan, usually saying, hey, you know what? I need to keep this 5 to 10. 10's even better, right? 5's, you know what? You're going to put a dent in it for sure in the mortgage. And, again, we've seen unprecedented appreciations over the years. The last 2 years are just crazy. I would have cashed out too. But it's just, it is a long game at the end of the day, right? For this. And now it's putting people in a position where, holy shit, they didn't have an extra 15 or 20K to throw out there and pay the mortgage for that
Well,
property.
you know what kills me too now? So Doug Ford and the Ontario provincial government changes the rules so you can put 2 or 3 unit dwellings on any property zone. It doesn't matter the zoning anymore. You can put multiple residences without all the red tape. They're going to take the part of the development fee off. Okay, because we need housing, because 250,000 people are coming to Ontario. We need all this stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who the hell wants to get into the rental market?
Okay,
like,
so
they have made it so difficult for landlords. Who is going to even bother to do this now? Because nobody wants to be in the rental business.
not right now, because it's only gotten worse and worse and worse and worse. So that's the point. We look at all these problems with the housing, not just the rental game, with even supply issues in the housing. It takes years to get a shovel in the ground and millions of dollars for these builders to go through it before anything happens. And there's so much cost there. They're going to the end user. It's being passed over to the buyer. So at home is so much money to obtain. And then why are they going to go and buy an investment property and roll the dice, in a sense, and hope they goddamn well pay the bill? Like, I know when I was doing this back, God, I think I bought my first rental property was 2005. I'm going to tell you, I was a lot younger and a lot stupider then. I rolled the dice and I bought multiple properties in a 3-year span. I think I was up to 6. And how I did that, you'd never attain that today. That would just be impossible. Back in the days, lending was a lot more looser, for one, but they didn't know what I owned. So I would walk right in. This is a true story. I went into Mike Bentham's office at RBC. This is, again, 2005. Hey, Mike, I want to buy a property. I got no money to put down, though. No problem, Mr. Turcotte. Grab a seat. Let's check it out. I was in real estate as a salaried worker, made decent money. Credit was impeccable. Next day, Mike gets back to me. He says, can you afford 1% down on legal costs? Because I got an approval for you. Absolutely. So that was the third property. Great. Then I kept doing it. And then sometimes I had to put a little bit down, but it was very little investment. But I can tell you right now, if one of those tenants didn't pay rent, I was screwed back then. Because I was a salary. I didn't have a plan B. I was young. I was in my low 30s. I said, screw this. These properties are going to really help me out down the road. It's worth the risk. But it was a bonus. No one could do that today. But again,
Mark, if I try to buy a property today, another property I haven't bought in years, and let me tell you, it's like a 60-page scan here now. They want 3 months of bank statements. They want every single transaction in your bank. They want to see all the rent from all your stuff. They want to see your 3 years of notice of assessments. They want to see your up-to-date current. Like, I mean, honestly, it was 50 or 60 pages, no word of a lie.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And they want 20% down, and you can do private money and try to finagle things. There's ways to get around things, but even private money,
It's too expensive now.
oh yeah, you can't do it anymore.
No.
So like, I don't understand where the government is coming from, because they want to stimulate the economy and they want to get people to do multi-residential things like 2-3 unit. Well, who's going to do that at this interest rate as well? Their mortgages are so high that the rents aren't covering. You're not making any.
You know, I saw a house that sold. I think Kobe did them. I think it was on Arda. There was a couple semis he did. He did a semi there, and they were legal. So 3 bedrooms up, 2 down, legal.
I think it might have been Brady.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Nice looking property. And
Yeah.
it had that 3rd suite, that garden suite in the back. So the other day I saw it on the board. It was listed for 1.1. They had offers on that property. 1.1 for 3 units.
Okay, but the garden suites are getting over 2,000 a month.
Right. I think the cash flow should sustain that for sure. Right. But again, how many investors can afford?
You know what? Investors aren't buying that. You know who's buying it? Who's buying it is a mom and a daughter who has a single mom with a couple kids. And the mom lives in one, the daughter lives in another, and then they rent out the garden suite. Or the mom lives in the garden suite, the daughter lives upstairs, they rent the basement to help with the mortgage.
Yeah.
I see most rental properties these days, investors aren't buying them.
Yeah, they want them owner occupied. And that's a good point, because when you look at the board and you see what's available out there, all those properties are tenanted. They've been sitting for months.
No one's buying that.
No one's buying that. No one's buying that headache. And even with some of the higher rents, I mean, I think some investors would probably, but when you see a vacant duplex on the board, it's gone. It's gone within a week. So do we know who the buyer is? Well, it's either an investor or it's probably a mom and, a young couple saying, hey, you know what? The only way we can get in here is rent this basement out.
Well, I've talked to a lot of agents that are selling those.
Yep.
And they're owner occupied. They are, because a bank mortgage approval, if it's a legal duplex, they'll count the income.
Correct.
100% of the income.
Yep.
So if I can't afford the house on my own, if I'm getting 1,800 from the basement, they count that towards the mortgage approval.
Right.
If it's not legal, they won't. So I know a lot of agents that like their clients had to have a legal duplex or they couldn't buy a house.
Correct. So what would you say to new investors today as your clients? How would you safeguard, or what would you recommend for someone that's maybe getting into this for the first time, in a sense of screening? We all know about the screening, but the screening can be manipulated. The articles.
You know what I suggest now in the market, the way that it is right now, what I would suggest is pay the 1 month's rent and list it on realtor.ca. No agent is going to bring you a tenant unless they've already been pre-approved. They know their credit's good. They know they have good income, job, like security. If you try to do it yourself, there are some really good professional tenants out there. They know exactly how to act, what to give you. Call the references. It's their best friend. There's no point in calling.
That's the thing, right? And that's where we're seeing a lot of these newbie investors get hurt. You know what I do? Because I put these comments out, and to your point, hire a professional. I'd even take it a step further. I'd probably hire a property management company. That'd just be me. But anyway, you know what I do?
With one property, it doesn't really make sense. If you're just
to find the tenant, though, just to find the tenant, right? Either you hire a realtor or you hire an agent.
You hire somebody.
Got that experience to do it. But you know what I suggested out there too to some people, because they've asked for my comments. I would go to their place of employment unannounced to verify that they work there and speak to somebody. I would, on the application, we're going to see where they live. I'd go unannounced, knock on your door. Oh, by the way, I just wanted to give you, an information about insurance companies that you should have a house insurance, content insurance on. So it gives you an idea how they live. Third thing, I would take this a step further, and I would knock on neighbors' doors. How many nosy neighbors that are neighborhoods that knows, oh God, there's trouble at that rental property. They've had numerous amounts of
Yeah,
problems.
just like the
Tell you
SWAT
the
thing,
story.
the big
Right.
SWAT thing that just happened at my client's rental
Yeah.
property last week.
Like it's crazy. You gotta do different things and think outside the box today, and not obviously the traditional way of verifying or vetting a prospective tenant isn't working. To some degree, it's not. They're still slipping through the cracks.
You need a professional,
You
really.
need a professional, and I think we should probably end on that note. And I hope that some investors that are getting into this game take that advice. Hire people to do this for you. Don't do it alone.
Exactly.
That's a wrap. See ya.